and thank you for being here. Today, you're joining the Dovetail Learning webinar on breathing mindfully. My name is Chuck Fisher. I'm a transpersonal psychologist by training, one of the founders of Dovetail Learning, and originator, author, architect of our We Are Resilient approach. And today we're going to be talking about breathing, one of the most important skills that there are, one of the things that impacts us the most. And I'll begin just by giving you a little bit on Dovetail. If you're not familiar with our work, Dovetail Learning is a nonprofit that promotes resilience for children and adults. And we've been deeply in the education space, teaching teachers about training children in resilience, and also the healthcare space and working with families, all for the purpose of making the world a better place, kind and connected human beings. And so we're talking about resilience. Let's just look at our primary definition, which we've borrowed from Anne Maston, wonderful psychologist at the University of Minnesota. She says resilience is just an ordinary superpower. It is not rare. It doesn't have special qualities. It's just the everyday magic of being human. And resilience is something we all dig into every day. When we go off center and we bring ourselves back, we're being resilient. We're bouncing back. And we all know we have to do that every single day, sometimes in huge ways, sometimes in small ways. Someone gets in my way in traffic or cuts me off, I might have a reaction, and then I can take a breath, breathe mindfully, and bring myself back to center. And because breathing mindfully is so important, I thought we would just go ahead and jump right in. I borrowed this word presencing from MIT and the Presencing Institute. They use a verb to indicate becoming present. Presencing indicates that we are in the consciousness of being aware. And what I'd like to do is bell in for all of us. We've got people from around the United States on this call. I'm going to use this singing bowl, and I'm just going to ring the bowl once. Give us a chance to pause from wherever we have been in our day, access the breath, and settle. And then when we come back out, I'll ask you to use the chat window and just chat in a word or a phrase about your own state of being. We'll get to that in a moment. So, using the breath to go inside and help ourselves all be present. I invite you to settle, relax wherever you're sitting. Maybe put your feet on the ground if that's possible. And either defocus or close your eyes. And begin by just noticing your breath. Notice your breathing, notice the in breath and the out breath. Notice the sensation of the breath as it comes in through the nostrils. And begin to get in touch with your entire state of being, body, mind, somatic tension or relaxation, the mind's busyness or presence to this moment. And just give yourself this gift of the pause with the breath, noticing how we are. And just take a couple of more breaths, appreciating your breath, noticing your body, and coming back together. Presencing ourselves. Now let's presence each other a little bit by wording in. Go ahead and take the chat window and type in your state of being this time of day, wherever you are, whatever time zone you're in. What have you noticed by just pausing and breathing? Oh, thank you. Josh, calm. Cheryl is putting in tense. There's tired. Refreshed. Not feeling too well. Yes, isn't that just how life is? Sometimes we don't feel too well. There's so much going on. Adding in the words of resilient, interested, hopeful, another tired, end of a long day, anticipating, and grateful. Thank you. Drained. So much that we hold every day, isn't there? So the breath, just for a moment, we took less than a minute there, and we used the breath to pause and just gain awareness of how we are. So breathing mindfully can be done in the simplest of terms, the briefest of moments, just to gain access to our somatic self, our whole self, to see how we're doing. Of course, when we do that with a group, we learn together how we all are together. So I'm going to go through just a few of our skills here as part of the We Are Resilient approach. We're not going to look at the whole approach at all. You can access that on our website, which I'll give you information about at the end. And I'm just going to bring up our slide on nurturing myself. This is one of the key centering skills. Notice the centering skill icon in the top of the page here. Nurturing myself is a choice. And all of our skills have a tagline. Nurturing myself is for better health. I nurture myself. And the choice in this case is breathing. We can nurture ourselves by accessing the breath mindfully. It is a choice that we can make numerous times during the day. It's a practice that we can practice, but it makes all the difference in the world. So what we're going to do is today in this webinar, it's a brief webinar, about 30 minutes, and we're going to look at breathing mindfully and go a little deeper into exactly what we mean by that. What is it? And then we're going to look at some of the science behind it. What does science tell us about the breath, respiration, accessing the breath, being mindful of the breath? How does that impact us neurologically, chemically, biologically? And then what are some of the practices, the ways in which we can use our breath on a day-to-day basis? And we'll also look through the mindsets of curiosity, choice, and courage, which are what we teach at Dovetail Learning, are the resilient mindsets. Being curious, looking for the possible choices, and then having the courage to take those choices. So moving right into breathing mindfully. Just think of the words for a moment, breathing and mindfully. Breathing is something that we do all day, every day. God granted us that great right to breathe. It's the foundation of our ability to be here on this planet at all. And mindfully, what does mindfully mean? Does it mean using the mind in a certain way? Mindful is about awareness. That's about consciousness. So we're talking about breathing with awareness and consciousness, bringing our full attention, mindfully, our full attention on breath, on ourselves, on our experience of ourselves as we breathe, so that we can learn more about who and how we are. So let's just call in the mindsets more fully. Again, the mindsets of curiosity, choice, and courage. What we bring in with curiosity is this wondering about how, in this case, how am I being? There's lots of things we can be curious about, but inside of the breathing mindfully, it's how am I being? How am I being? How mindful can I be of my own state of being? And choice brings us into the question of what empowering choice can I make? In this case, when and how might I breathe mindfully in order to impact my state of being? And courage, which is a question of who do I most want to be? How do I most want to be? Courage comes from the root word core, which means heart. So it's following our heart. Courage is about having the courage to follow our heart, to take a stand about being the kind of person I want to be. And we do that often in the face of what we call stress. I'll just bring up this slide on what's typically called the fight, flight, freeze response. And I crossed out the word stress because stress is really about feelings, difficult feelings. How do we respond to difficult feelings, difficulties in life? And we can fight them, we can flee from them, we can get frozen around them, but we can also face them. And in facing them, we can face that we have this tool, this access to the breath and breathing mindfully. Our typical stress reaction is that something happens, we're going along fine, there's an event, we have a reaction, we call those protective patterns, brings us into a peak of reactiveness, reactive state, we call it losing our cool. We eventually calm down, there's a depletion afterwards. It takes time to calm ourselves down after stress. And in order to manage our stress, we can be curious about our protective patterns, our reactiveness. We can wonder and assess, how am I, who am I being, what are my choices, and choose a resilience skill, in this case, breathing, and breathing mindfully. And we also bring in, as I said before, courage to anticipate stress, to notice when we're in stress, and to use the breath to impact ourselves in the context of our life and whatever it is that we're dealing with, whether it's being drained or tired at the end of the day. Breath can revitalize us, or it can be that we're upset and something's happening that is triggering our anger, and we can use our breath to get both in touch with what the values behind that and the ability that we have, this inherent superpower, ordinary superpower, to use the breath to bring ourselves into a mindful, more equanimous place in our body-mind. I'll just position breathing mindfully in our set of centering skills, starting with noticing myself, breathing mindfully, and then breathing mindfully can take us into all these other skills of letting go, finding gratitude, reframing positively how our mindset, and of course nurturing ourselves. So let's go now into breathing mindfully more fully. As with all of our skills, we have a tagline for breathing mindfully. We say, breathe deeply, feel it completely. Feel it completely. There's something magic that happens when we feel the sensory experience of the breath in our body. And we'll look at that in a little depth as we go through this. If we get curious about breathing mindfully, we might ask ourselves, well, where do I feel the breath inside my body? What are those sensations? And how does feeling my breath, how does conscious breathing, mindful breathing impact me? Take another breath as we move into this, and breathe deeply, feel it completely. So I want to take a little more time to walk us into the experience of breathing mindfully and the consideration of how breathing mindfully does impact us. So as you saw in the write-up of this webinar, we're going to do a little bit of experiential here, and we'll go back into that now. But I'd again like to invite everyone to do is to put aside anything that's distracting. Use the slider on your screen so that you can make the image of breathing mindfully and the little rock cairn there, the pile of rocks, maybe a little bigger than me. And again, feet on the floor. And if you're comfortable, adjust your posture. Maybe put a hand on the belly, a hand over the heart so that you can feel the embodiment of your breath here in your torso. And then again, we'll just drop into the practice of breathing as we like to teach it, which starts with, as before, just noticing that we're breathing. Enjoy the pause, the rest that the breath affords. And bring all of your attention to the breath, its rise and fall. And particularly the felt sense, the feeling, the sensation of the breath in your body. Maybe bring the attention just to your nostrils and the air as it comes in through your nostrils. If you're comfortable, let your mouth remain closed and just breathe in and out through your nostrils. Feel the sensation of the air, the coolness in the interior of your nostrils, and warmth as the air recedes. And follow that sensation from your nostrils down through the back of your throat and into your lungs. Resting in the expansion and contraction of your lungs, the feeling of the lungs expanding and releasing. Just let it happen naturally. You might take a deeper breath or a shallower breath. It's all perfect. And then bring your awareness all the way down to your belly. If your lower hand is on your belly, just notice the rise and fall of the belly as we breathe in and we breathe out. And just for a moment, appreciate that your body is breathing you. Always bringing in new air to replenish your oxygen. And how that oxygen goes through your entire system, and the carbon dioxide is released inside your bloodstream and brought back out through your lungs into the breath, out into the air. incredible transfer of energy in each and every breath. What a miracle this everyday superpower is that we call the breath. And then take one or two big, deep cleansing breaths. Allow your hands to drop, wiggle your fingers and your toes. And when you're ready, bring yourself back into the room. And just notice what you notice. Notice what you notice. If you feel like keyboarding, just type in whatever word comes to mind. Calm, energized, a little sleepy, present. Sometimes the breath will just bring us present. And then I have a very interesting question for you, maybe the most important. What were you not noticing when you were feeling the sensation of the breath deeply in your body, in the embodiment of your body? What were you not noticing? Not noticing what's around me. When my eyes were closed, I wasn't noticing the rest of the room, the work that I need to complete, the things that are ahead of me in the day or this evening, whatever time of day you are. If you're in Sweden, you're just about to wake up tomorrow morning. So this is how it works. Our mind, what we call the mental channel, is the only way we get stressed out. We have to be thinking about something that's happened earlier that's upset us, or we have to be thinking about that list of the work we need to complete, the tasks that need to be done, the difficult conversation we may need to have later. And that's all in the thinking realm. When we start breathing mindfully, we bring our awareness right to the tip of our nose, in through the breath, into the somatic, kinesthetic, proprioceptive channels of our sensation. And when we bring our awareness into our sensation, we leave the mental channel, we come down into this somatic channel. And it turns out that our whole body-mind resets itself when we do that. We just shift from the mental channel to the kinesthetic body channel, and we're hardwired. Literally, the respiration is hardwired to release us into a place that's different, chemically, biologically, neurologically. Think about it for a moment in terms of the expansion of the chest. When we're constricted, when we're upset about something, we tend to hold our breath, and our chest is constricted, our muscles are constricted, and our lungs are constricted, our heart gets constricted. As soon as we open up that channel, we open up the lungs, we open up the muscles, everything opens up, and we change. And we change in some of these ways through this incredible body-mind connection that is deeply embedded throughout our entire being. We have the sympathetic system, which is the involuntary system on one side, the parasympathetic system on the other, which is voluntary. We just used our voluntary system to access the breath, to bring our awareness to the breath, and that changes us. If we're in the sympathetic system and we're under stress, our heart is literally beating in a chaotic way, as depicted by this graph. And it's as measured also by the HRV, which is heart rate variability, the space between our heartbeats. When we move in, it also releases cortisol at the biological level when we're in that stressed out condition. On the voluntary parasympathetic side, when we start to regulate our breath, we start to pay attention to the sensation of the breath in our body. our heart rate variability literally changes, and it moves into this wavelength sign called heart coherence, which is a technical term for when the heart is coherently beating in harmony with itself. And when it's doing that, instead of producing cortisol, our body is starting to produce DHEA, dehydroepiandrosterone. It's the anti-stress hormone, anti-aging hormone, and it changes us neurologically, chemically, biologically. On the stress side, that's where we live in the freeze, fight, flight zone. On the regulation parasympathetic side, that's where we live in the, oops, I went a little too fast, in the pause, presence, and perceive zone. Now we have this incredible mind-body integration, which is connected through the vagus nerve. Our entire brain is connected through the vagus nerve, down through this main channels through our throat and area, down into the heart. The vagus nerve completely embodies the heart as depicted in this medical illustration. And the vagus nerve goes all the way down into our gut through all the lining of the intestines. And we have this incredible body-mind integration between head, heart, and gut. And in medical science right now, that's often talked about in terms of psychoneuroimmunology. Psychoneuroimmunology, which is the study of the mind-body integration between what's happening in our psyche, our thoughts, our beliefs, our attitudes, how our thinking mind in our thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes impacts our neurology, the neurons, the nerves, brains, the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous systems, the somatic and autonomic, parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous systems, and how all of that impacts the immune system, our systemic response to infection. We're talking about the breath here, the respiration, the impact of respiration, the impact of bringing our consciousness onto our respiration, and how it can soothe and smooth not only the vagus nerve, but our thoughts, our neurons, and our immune system, where our heart rate drops, our blood pressure drops, our immune system strengthens itself. All is seen through deep inquiry and research into science. Notice on neuro there that I used the word brains, plural. We often think that our brain is here in the skull, and it is, of course. Our skull is filled with neurons. We talk about and hear about it in common literature all the time. But it also turns out that we have the same neurons in our skull brain in what's now known as the heart brain. There's an entire ganglia of nerves inside the heart, which is considered a separate brain. It has functional decision-making separate from the head. And we also have those same neurons fully embedded in the gut, which is known as the gut brain. Now, if you think of just your common sense ways of talking and thinking about stress, we often say, well, I knew it in my gut, or I had this gut feeling. We might call it intuition, but it's actually literally, it's the sensations in the gut. Turns out that in perception science, when something occurs in the world, the first place it shows up in our body is literally in the gut. It's in the small hairs in the lining of the intestine. And then it moves, that information flows to the heart, which flows to the brain. And we have this incredible normal superpower of our body-mind integration that's impacted by our breathing. Heart Math Institute, where I've been trained, talks about the impact of the heart-brain connection. The heart literally tells the brain, sends information to the brain 90% of the time. 10% of the time, the brain is telling the heart what to do. But again, from our poetry, we say when I knew it in my heart, then I knew what to do, or what's the heart of the matter. Our heart is a deeply embodied part of us. And I love this quote from Thich Nhat Hanh. He says, breathe in deeply to bring your mind home to your body, home to your body. So I've talked a little bit about the difference between thinking and feeling. I want to show you some science here on the difference as it's been measured neurologically between thinking and feeling. This is an image of real-time biofeedback of the posterior cingulate cortex. It's a small part of the brain and the interior of the brain. But what it shows is that when we're in thinking, we're in an activated, the cingulate cortex is an activated place. If we actually go move to the sensation of the breath, all of a sudden the posterior cingulate is deactivated and it starts moving into a restful place. And if you take that one step further, when it's been studied of pure experienced meditators in a pure state of being or flow, you can see that the posterior cingulate cortex is in a very deeply deactivated space. And the body-mind is at rest, which is why we get re-energized when we use breathing. I realize it's 4:31. I'm going to go a little bit longer. I hope you don't mind. If you have to jump off, I will be sending both a recording of this webinar as well as the slides from this slideshow. So we just have a few more connections to make here. One is the electromagnetic field of the heart. This comes from the HeartMath Institute, where they teach that the heart is like a Wi-Fi system. If you think of the heartbeat, in Wi-Fi radio waves, we have all kinds of ways that we communicate that we can't see. Well, it turns out that the heart communicates in ways that we can't see. You can wire people up with electrodes and have one person in one room, another person in this room. If I am the person in this room and I go into an activated, upset state by thinking about negative memories, the person in the next room who's wired up receives those and they get that same activation. So this information that flows from the heart, which can be measured electromagnetically about 10 feet away from the body, but goes much, much farther when you look at intuition studies and some of the studies of paranormal phenomenon and the ways in which we can know things and we don't know how we know them. All of that means that when we change ourselves, when we bring ourselves from an activated place into a calm place, that calmness pervades the room. You've all experienced it. You've walked into a room where you could cut the tension with a knife. You've walked into other rooms where you could feel the joy. It's all just happening unconsciously through our body-mind field of awareness. So let's take this, where do we take this next? Into breathing mindfully. We'll just do a little bit of a science recap here. It de-escalates our emotional reaction, reduces heart rate, immune system strengthening, connects the brain and the heart, and it connects us with others. If you think about breathing mindfully and the ways that you might incorporate it into your own life, there are many micro practices that you can do. Of course, there are macro practices. You can start the day by sitting on a zafu and going into deep meditation and just pay attention to the breath in your body. Do that for 2 minutes or 5 minutes or an hour. I've done it for 10 days at a time. It changes us. But we can also do it in what we call micro practices at every stop sign or stoplight that you get to. Before we begin a meeting, we have that practice of doing a bell in and a word in before every meeting that we have at Dovetail Learning. Anytime I feel myself getting tense, when I train myself to know how to access the breath, all I have to do is bring myself here. I have a favorite teacher, Angela Sarian, cross-cultural anthropologist who studies this across cultures. She says, well, it's just coming home. Come home to your own body. and allow yourself to relax. Maybe before you re-enter your home after a long day at work, or every time you brush your teeth. B.J. Fogg, a professor at Stanford, created a program called Tiny Habits. He said, when we want to add new habits to our life, the best way to do it is in small increments, and add the habit to something that you already do every day, like stop at a light, or go to a meeting, or feel tense. You get the idea. So breathe deeply, feel it completely. Here's maybe the biggest takeaway from this webinar. Begin to self-identify as someone who breathes mindfully. Sometimes we self-identify as someone who gets stressed out, or someone who is having a difficult day. I have all these narratives in my mind. But if I shift my identity to the kind of person I want to be, I want to be a person who breathes mindfully. So take on that identity, if you will. And then you can take that identity into your own life. You can help others become resilient by supporting yourself in your own breathing mindfully, helping the people that you live with, you work with, take that breathing mindfully to our world. You can access a ton of things on our website, dovetaillearning.org. That includes downloading free digital resources. We have circles, trainings, and certified coaches. You can purchase printed books and handouts, and you can write us at info@dovetaillearning if you want anything. And what I didn't say at the outset of this webinar, but I'll close with, is that everything that we've created at Dovetail is an open education resource, an OER. You can download and use it for free, adapt it, use it in your community. We're licensed through Creative Commons, which is an international license. And if you use our work, you need to give attribution to Dovetail Learning, and then collaborate, share back. And if you do anything with the work, you have to share it alike, which means with the same license, the same OER license. So I went 40 minutes. Thank you so much for being here the whole time. Appreciate who you are. You're showing up, and enjoy your breath a little bit more. Thanks again for being here. And those of you writing in, you're very welcome. It's my pleasure. This is what I like to do most, train and teach this work. With that, I will thank you. You're so welcome. I will end our webinar for today. Appreciate it very much. Okay, bye.